Welcome to Life Beyond B.S, where we ditch the belief systems and the bullshit and get real about life. Here it's about awareness, choice, and creating joy that actually lasts. No perfection, just honest talk and powerful change. I'm your host, Heather McNally, and let's get into it. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Life Beyond B.S, where we go beyond the belief systems and, the bullshit that society puts on us. My name is Heather McNally. I am your host, and I am thrilled today to welcome our guest, Steve Spiro. He is an international keynote speaker and author who hosts a weekly live broadcast on multiple platforms and is known today as the Master Connector. Though he started out as a shy introvert and art school kid who never imagined himself in business, he went on to launch his own advertising company in New York City, earn a black belt in karate and jiu-jitsu, and ultimately become a top sales performer. Now considered one of LinkedIn's top influencers with over 30,000 connections, he uses that journey to help audiences build genuine, meaningful connections. Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I would love to meet the person you're talking about. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love it.
Anyway, what's going on, everyone? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live or direct. Anyway, Great to be here. Really an honor to be on here with you, Heather.
Oh, and it's an honor to have you here. We just recently connected and we actually were in a meeting together. And when you started talking about connection and that you're the master connector, I was like, oh, I need to connect with you because connection is so incredibly important for everybody in this world, but also when you're in business. And it's really important for your brain. Yeah. So I want you to tell me a little bit about who you are at your heart and soul, because we heard the accolades. You're amazing at what you do. Share with us who you are at your heart and soul.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only way to answer that, best way to answer that is where I started and kind of the evolution. So I was bullied, I was picked on, I was learning disabled and dyslexic, really really low self-esteem in a dark place for a lot of years. And then I guess by the grace of God, I was met a very incredible businessman who became a mentor to me, who took me under his wing and got me on a path of self-development, books, podcasts, audios, and conferences, whatever, and networking, and told me to you need to meet 3 strangers every day. He said, Steve, and so that was a game changer for me, and started evolution. And so today, I mean, my mission is to be the light. I have a vision of being paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be a beacon of light. So it really to me. Yeah, for a long time, I was driven to prove those people wrong that kind of bullied me, that really talked down to me, that wrote me off. But the truth is, as I originally was kind of striving for the traditional version of success, the big cars, houses, etc., I realized true success is not how much things you have, but it's how many people are better off because you were in their life and that impact. And so the true heart and soul Steve is all about people today. It's all about human connection. It's about really blessing other people's lives by somehow touching them and being that light.
I love that so much. It's kind of like, people talk about self-actualization. When you start to get to a place where you really feel like you know who you are, deep down inside, you work on yourself. The bullies, sure, they may have given you the fire to get started, but then you come back and you're like, all right, this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to do. And they're just a different piece of you. It's a piece of your past.
No doubt.
Yeah. So what do you feel like connection was for you when you were growing up then with having bullies and being really shy and introverted?
Connection? What was that? Like growing up? Like I didn't even know what that meant. I did a TED Talk recently, and I mentioned in my talk, and so I'm not going to give away a lot of talk. If you haven't watched the TED Talk, not you have.
Definitely watch it. It's fantastic.
But the people that are listening and watching this, I want you to listen to it. But I talk about how my best friends growing up were characters on TV, people that couldn't hurt me. Captain Kirk from Star Trek and Ralph Cramden from The Honeymooners. I'm still watching My Best Friend. I watched it last night, like The Honeymooners. It's like, but I didn't know how to connect. I didn't understand it. To me, getting around people, there was a risk of getting hurt. So it
Mm.
was non-existent. I locked even in my own home. I locked myself in my own room. So like I didn't know what connection was. I for a long time thought this would be a great world if it wasn't for people,
Mm.
but so
Yeah.
yeah, non-existent.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad because I've actually said it myself before. When you get around people that are really have a bad energy, that are rude, that obviously a lot of them don't know themselves,
Yeah.
aren't comfortable in their own skin, and they can
Right.
be downright mean and obnoxious. And
Yeah.
I've said openly sometimes I hate people. And then I stop and I think, well, maybe I used to. Now I don't hate people. I just wish people would find themselves and have a better energy because they can really affect other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've learned to have grace and
Hmm.
understanding. And, I heard a story. I have a few of these, but I'll tell this one comes to mind. So, picture a scene in New York City subway. Maybe it's not during rush hour, but, people, whatever. And a man walks in with, I think, two young kids, maybe in, 5, 6, 7 years old, and they're like all over the place, jumping on the seats, hanging on the bars, like making all crazy havoc, right? And the man is sort of sitting there on the subway bench, if you will, the inside the subway, the train car. If you don't know what a subway means, but anyway, he's sitting there, his head down a little bit, kind of like oblivious to what his kids are doing, and the people around, are just annoyed. And a lady that's crossed away from the man, she just can't stand it anymore, and so she says, "Sir, excuse me. Do you understand, what your kids are doing? Like, can you control them or something?"
Mhm.
And he looks at her with his face, a sad face, and he said, "I'm really sorry, ma'am. We just got back from the hospital. And my wife just passed away. Their mom just passed away."
Oh.
So like here we are, we thinking that people are being a jerk, they're being stupid, they're
Mhm.
being, but we don't know,
Yeah.
what's happened to them, and so I've tried to have grace. Now, am I perfect? No way. I
Mhm.
have my moments, but you gotta understand it. You know, if you lived, like I said, I like to say this: if you lived in their shoes, you lived in their skin, the entire time they were alive, experienced everything they experienced, would you be any different?
Mhm.
Probably not, right?
Mhm.
So I just try to have grace.
Yeah. And that's really important to have grace because a lot of people love to look at somebody and judge them by what appears on the outside, what they look like,
Yeah,
who they hang around with, what they wear, the house that they live in, the cars that they drive.
right.
But I always say you never know what's going on behind the
Yeah,
closed doors in people's lives. They
yeah,
could have what people think is the perfect home, the perfect life, and internally they hate themselves.
yeah,
Maybe they're in an abusive situation.
yep.
You just don't know what's going on in
You
someone's
don't know.
life. Yeah.
You don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a sad story, and I'm glad he spoke up for himself and said that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
because
just
hopefully it taught her to have a little more grace too.
yeah, exactly, for sure.
What do you feel like you had to overcome internally to become somebody that could be the person that builds relationships and stand on a TEDx stage?
How long is this supposed to be for?
We've got all night.
Oh man, I mean
Yeah.
that's a book. I maybe round two of my book. I have, you see it
Yeah.
on screen. I have my book here, but
Books are power.
yeah. So I think it was a progression.
Mhm.
I think so. At 20 years old, I got into the martial arts, and that
Mhm.
was very different for me. And just sort of rewind the tape a little bit. So I'll give you a little perspective because I was so hurt and wounded as a person. I started to block out pain,
Mhm.
emotionally and physically. I got to a point where I was able to just numb myself out. And I don't mean like through drugs or anything like that. Just
Mhm.
physically, I learned how to, separate the mind from the body, if you will. And so much so that when I would come out, the occasional time I would come out of my room and speak to my family and my sisters, I would hand them my hand. I'd say, bite it, pinch it, scratch it, no pain. And if you ask them, they'll tell you it's the truth. So I was able to block pain and show no emotion. So here I am. I get into the martial arts. I go to my karate studio, and they're telling me the one of the main premises about what we train here is we teach we you want to have show no emotion and show no pain. I'm like, perfect. I'm fitting in right perfect here, you know.
You're ahead
So
of the game.
I'm ahead of the game. So, but it was certainly a lot of overcoming, a lot of uncomfortability. But I did, to your point, I used the bullies as a way to give me the courage to get through the craziness. And so, yeah, I started to build some confidence in myself. I started to build one thing I've always had, and is the ability to work. And I outworked everybody. I worked harder, and I prided myself. To such a word. I was proud of myself. I don't know, proud of myself for doing that and outworking everyone. I actually passed everyone in the martial arts except for one guy. When I joined my karate school, 3 months later, this gentleman, John, wound up going for his black belt. What an incredible test. I mean, it was like a 5-hour test. I was like,
Hmm.
wow. Like, I was so impressed. But anyway, he got his black belt. By the time I backed away, I almost caught up to him. I was a fourth degree black belt. He was a fifth degree black belt, but I
Wow.
passed everybody else at the time. Now, I backed away since then. So now people have passed me. But that was because I worked harder. I stayed steady, never quit. And I got through all the hard times. I realized that I learned that if you stay steady, do the work, and never quit, you're going to succeed. And I learned how to break through the barriers of that fear of the
Hmm.
uncomfortability of things that because I realized that eventually it would pass. I mean, I know it's a spiritual expression, this too shall pass, but it is true. Eventually things, they get better, right? And so, like, the torture, my sensei is teacher, in the martial arts world, and it's in Japanese for sensei means he who went before. That's what the
Hmm.
Japanese the two words sensei. And so my sensei he was a sadistic SOB, okay? He was crazy. He was a combination of a Marine drill sergeant and I guess, like a really nasty football coach, and not the Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid, but the other crazy,
Oh, yes, the other
yeah,
guy. Yeah.
the Cobra Kai guy. So anyway, but he was crazy, but he tortured us in the middle
Hmm.
of the summer. It was a flat roof, tarred, single level storefront, no windows, and he would close the doors and put the
Hmm.
heat on in the middle of summer. And so, but you learn how to you get through it because it's not forever. And then so a lot of overcoming things that was phase one, and then of course starting a company, and that got me out of another phase was that. And learning all the do's and don'ts, and more don'ts than do's in
Hmm.
that phase of my life. And then eventually getting into marketing, and then being introduced to a mentor who you want to talk about had the picture on the outside and the inside, was everything. That's that man. And he had this piece about him, and so I was attracted to that, and not in a weird way, but I
Hmm.
wanted that lifestyle. And I and he's the one who challenged me to meet the three strangers, and that was another phase. So
Hmm.
I mean, everything was a little piece of the puzzle, and
Yeah.
then eventually I'm going through, and you watch my TED talk, you'll see some crazy stories, some crazy things, because it was very mechanical.
Hmm.
But then I had to learn how to become a connector, because yeah, I was learning how to meet people and network. But today in the world of networking, I think that a lot of people, especially younger folks, that look at networking as like prostitution and solicitation. It's ugly. So I didn't
Yeah.
want that. I wanted to learn how to be a connector, not a
Hmm.
networker. And
Yep.
so I started to have to not have to, but I started to learn. Okay, what is going to connect with people? And the biggest thing, I think, the biggest changing point, which is probably the real core to your answer, or the answer to your question, is when COVID hit. And
Hmm.
now I wasn't able to go out there and meet strangers, which
Hmm.
was like, it was in my DNA. I have to do this. I have to do this. And because I'm task driven, and how am I going to meet strangers? I would go out there, and the people would be masked up. I'm in the Northeast, so nobody, everyone was masked up. It was like, ugh,
Hmm.
I can't meet somebody with, I can't see their face. It just was weird for me. So So how am I going to do this? Well, LinkedIn. Okay, I have some good amount of connections, and I started doing these Zoom calls, and I think it was maybe 5 or 6 or 7 Zoom calls a day, and
Mm.
and I don't know if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill
Yep.
Murray, but it was kind of Groundhog Day. Okay, I got to see. Okay, that conversation didn't work. That was, what I said there didn't really work. Okay, let's try. And I just kind of started to see what worked. And it's how I started to develop the 4 pillars that I speak about, on stage, the 4 pillars that I speak about in my book, the 4 pillars that are my Master Connector show. You can see here, I have a show every Wednesday at
Mhm.
1 o'clock, shameless plug, 1 o'clock EST. But the pillars are being authentic,
Mhm.
being others focused. Now, those are the two that were the main ones. Having
Mhm.
grit, which is what gets you through everything, and then building community, growing connections. It's all about growing community. So those pillars were established strongly, deep rooted. It was established in a deep rooted way
Mm.
during that COVID time frame. So I think that was a big one for me and started to really shape what truly the master connector really means. And it's
Yeah.
not something I don't want to be the only master connector. I just think anyone can be a master connector. You just have
Mhm.
to really, work at it and
Yeah.
develop. And some people are probably way better than I was and maybe still better than I am. But
I wouldn't say better. What I would say is different. I think
yeah,
that, like they say, comparison is the thief of joy. And I was just
right.
having a conversation with somebody earlier, and it was like we were talking about how when you get that imposter syndrome and you think,
Hmm.
well, I'm this, and you feel it, but you don't 100% believe it.
Right.
So, you compare yourself to others and you say, well, that one's better than me, and this person's better than me. And
Hmm.
that will take away from your own genius, your own brilliance, what the light that you shine on people because you're going to do it differently than anybody else is. So,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
love that you did the shameless plug because that's what we're here for. Life is about connection. And if you don't have connection in this world, first of all, it's not healthy. And second of all, what are you doing? Are you sitting at home under a rock by yourself? So you mentioned grit as a huge part of your journey. Can you share a moment in your life when you feel that grit really helped pull you through?
I think some of it is what I spoke about in the martial arts. That really shaped the grit. Um, I remember, I'll just give you a story, which was really a life lesson for me in general. So here I am, I'm about 5'7" barely, and a little stocky. I didn't start, a lot of the guys that I trained with in the martial arts they'd started up much younger, and so they were more flexible. I wasn't very flexible. I could barely kick to head level, and plus I had short limbs. Still do. Okay, they haven't
Mhm.
grown since. Okay, so I found I was getting cut everywhere. I was getting split eyebrows, split here, split lip, split you name it, broken nose, everything. And I'm like, but I was hanging in there. Like when I broke my nose, I learned how to not duck into my 6'5", 300-pound
Mhm.
sensei's roundhouse kick and ducked right
Oh,
into his knee, and the
yeah.
nose went over here. But I didn't even like at that point. I was like, okay, I've been to the emergency room multiple times. I know I'm not a life-threatening, serious injury. They're gonna have me there 5 hours. It's gonna be ridiculous. I know you can't put a cast on a nose. So
Hmm.
what are they gonna do for me? So I'm like, I straightened it myself. It kept falling back. I straightened it. It
Oh.
kept falling back. But I stayed in class. Blood on my gi, which gi is uniform. Like I went anyway, right? And I
Hmm.
just, I went. But I learned. I said to myself, okay, because Einstein says definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I said I got to figure this out. And one of the things I learned is it's great to have a sensei or a coach or a mentor, but you
Hmm.
also have to take some ownership yourself and figure out what's going to make things work for you.
Right.
Because that mentor, coach, whatever sensei isn't experiencing everything you're experiencing because they're not in your shoes. So you got to figure it out. And so I started to think, okay, what's going to be my strength zone? So I started to develop a punch, and I started to there's a thing called a makiwara. It's basically a device you something you would strike, a striking device. It was usually made of like sand, like a canvas with sand, and it was up against the wall or the column of the dojo, and I would just hit it and hit it and hit it like constantly. And then I started to want to even further strengthen my knuckles, and because you break your knuckles, they get stronger, they calcify, and then they become this like rock. It's why if you see some of the old school Bruce Lee type movies, they used to do crazy things, pound sand and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But so I started to use the fist that had become my weapon, the punch that became my weapon. And then at one point, I'm like, okay, well, that's great, but how am I going to get in? These people are bigger than me. Because the problem was, I'm trying to fight them at a distance, which is perfect for their length, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't get anything in because I'm shorter and my limbs are shorter. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to figure out how to close distance quick, and then I got my punch in. And eventually, I got to a point where here I am. We would be changing up at in the back in the locker room, and some of my fellow dojo buddies were kind of bragging, comparing to each other their tattoo. The tattoo being the big bruise mark that they got from when I punched him in the rib cage or the solar plexus. So it was inevitable. The punch was coming. I was getting it in, and it was pretty devastating. Not to
Mm.
kill. They didn't kill anybody with it, but it
Yeah.
was it was coming. So that lesson of learning and became a weapon that I knew I had, and of course that wasn't the only thing I did because
Mm.
but it was coming,
Mm-hmm.
and so I took that lesson, and that whole entire experience, and I've taken that into other areas of my life, into sales, into meeting and connecting people. It's the same idea. It's what becomes some of your strength or your superpower that you could
Mm-hmm.
then rely on. But the grit is what gets you to that point where you're able to get to something where it becomes your strength zone. And if you unfortunately, I heard this, a lot of people chase starting lines, but they should be chasing finishing lines. And because we're so like there's like the A zone, B zone. The A zone being it's new, it's fun, it's exciting. But then the minute it starts not getting fun and exciting and new, they're like, it's
Mm.
dreadful. And then they quit and move on to something else, the next girlfriend, the next wife, the next
Mm-hmm.
job, the next business, the next whatever, the next diet craze, right?
Yeah.
Like the next new thing. So you got to finish and you got to stay in there and be persistent. But persistence is not just doing this is a challenge I've had in the past. Is just hitting my head against the wall, hoping something's going to change. My mentor said to me one day, he said, Steve, I see your head, you're pounding your head against the wall. Let me show you just 3 inches over to the right. There's something, it's called a door. You just open the door and get in. Like sometimes it's not just pounding your head and
Yeah.
keep going. Yes, keep going, but you got to figure out what's going to work for you. And so
Right.
obstacles became things that I figured out, okay, I'm either going to break through it, get over it, get around it, get under it, but I'm going to get
Mm-hmm.
through it because I'm just keep going.
And that's an excellent point is that everything you go through is a learning process.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to sit down and go, okay, I'm aware of this now. I see this. I'm
Yeah.
going to acknowledge where it is that I am and what it is that I want and get to make that decision to move
That's
forward.
right.
And it's also it's consistency, like you said, and the
Hmm.
grit and the resilience to get back up when something doesn't work. And
Yep.
we learn so much from our failures. Like you
Yep.
said, you're sitting there trying to figure out, all right, my limbs are shorter. And I can relate to this too because I did Krav Maga,
That's right. We talked
speaking
about
of
that.
martial arts. And
Yep.
I actually, during my brown belt, ruptured my Achilles 80% of the way
Mhm.
through the exam. And I was so mad because I worked so hard to get to that place. And I was like, no, I can walk. I'm okay. And my sensei was like, tell me what it really feels like. I'm watching you. And I was like, my foot doesn't feel like it's attached to my body. And he's like, yep, we're calling it. And that was devastating because I had worked so hard. But guess what? It taught me other things.
Yeah.
So to be able to look at a situation, become aware, even if it's not what you want in the moment, you're going to
Hmm.
learn something going through it. And then to
That's right.
have a mentor and somebody else to point out things that you may not see
Yeah.
is brilliant.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You're either winning or you're learning, right? That's what I've learned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Failure, people say, failure. And, yes, sometimes you don't succeed in what it is you thought you were going to get, but it's always success because you learn
Mhm.
something from it and you get to move on from it.
That's right.
So I know you do a lot of work with the AI world, and we're living in a world right now where people are more connected digitally than ever before. But there's like this epidemic of loneliness, and people are feeling that. So, why do you think that's happening when there is more potential connection than ever?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I speak from stage, one of my keynote topics is breaking barriers to create real human connection in this digital AI driven world. And yeah, we're living in a very connected world, but the screen has created a barrier. So I speak on how to break those barriers through being authentic, being others focused, having grit, and building community and growing connections. I think more now than ever before, the human part is so important. Another talk I have is called the real AI, which is authentic influence, right? But it's so important today that the human piece is the separator. I'm getting these emails or messages on LinkedIn, and even people that are commenting on my posts, or I'm seeing comments on LinkedIn. I could tell they're AI driven. It's ugly. It's not. It's to me. It's having the counter effect. So you need to be conscious of that. And I think now more than ever, I think people craving that human connection. I'm seeing more and more now people wanting to go back to work, to be in the office so they can collaborate. And I'm seeing more networking events happening in person now. So it's and we're humans. We're wired with, and granted, the early part of my life, I didn't want to be around humans, but notice that's not the case anymore. So I think it's so important. And I think you're right that we're wired, and the psychology, how when we're connected, we feel better.
Mhm.
I know that. I'll just say this: the Steve that you're looking at, that you're talking to, my default mechanism would be I'd rather sit in front of the TV and binge watch and eat, Buddy Pecan Haagen-Dazs ice cream, a whole pint of it. Oh, by the way, it feels like the pint became a pint because it seems smaller than it was before. I don't know what happened,
I'm
but
sure it has, and it probably costs a lot more too.
it probably does. But that's the default, and it feels so good, tastes so good. So you enjoy it when you're eating it, but afterwards you feel crappy. At least
Mhm.
I feel crappy.
Yep.
But that's the default, right? But when I go to the gym, I could just before this, I was in the gym, and the regular Steve just wants to eat the ice cream, but I go to the gym and I push myself, and maybe I don't want to go. The little boy in me, like, no, I don't want to go. But you go anyway, right? And then you feel great afterwards, right?
Mhm.
And I feel connection and getting out there and being around people. Especially as an introvert, I don't want to.
Mhm.
That boy's crying. "Hey, I don't want to. Just stay at home. Watch something." But when I do, I feel so much better. And I've learned that if you could touch someone's life and put a smile on their face, or
Mm.
make them feel like they're heard, right? A big part of what I speak about on my TED talk is listening. Ask real
Mhm.
questions. Listen, observe. Don't be so quick to want to talk. Listen, be a good listener.
Yeah.
That's why I believe the an introvert out connects the rest, which is the topic of my TED talk, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I think human connection is so important.
It's incredibly important. And from a brain science perspective, it only comes in terms of pillars of health, brain health, second only to sleep, because we need sleep for our brain to, so our
Yeah.
brain can do its job and get rid of the toxins that build up. But connection, we are wired for connection. We do not survive. And there are studies that have
Yes,
shown babies in orphanages,
that's
and
right.
some babies get the care and the loving, and the other babies literally get only exactly what they need, and they have failure to thrive, or didn't even survive. And
That's
that
right.
shows you how deep connection really is. And when you talk about networking, the old kind of networking that people think of that makes you feel kind of icky is you go in and everybody's there for themselves, hands
Yeah.
out their business card, asks for clients, and walks out of the room.
Hmm.
I feel like connection through networking is really finally changing to
Yeah.
people actually take the time to get to know each other and have maybe speakers come in, or have somebody, have games that they play so that they can actually truly connect.
Yeah.
And then the connecting, networking business meeting is only part of it because they do things outside.
Yeah.
I know that I was a director for a networking group for a short time. And when I was doing that, our whole thought was we come in here and we have these things. We have businesses get to be shown and people get to talk, but we did group things where everybody got a chance to answer questions or ask questions. And a big part of what we did was, hey, get together for coffee chats outside of here and post about it and tag each other. Hey, go into somebody's local business and post that you're there and share about it. So it's becoming so much more uh, true to what humanity really needs and what humanity really is than it used to be.
Yeah. And I agree with everything you said. And one thing that I will say is, from a networking perspective, I probably am a little bit of a contrarian in that it seems like I'm going to contradict myself. So I am the guy that goes to networking events and I try to get as many cards as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I realize that those cards, there's no connection.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can, and I've seen the opposite side of it. People that go to a networking event, they see one person and they spend most of the night with that one person,
Mm-hmm.
probably because they're a little bit uncomfortable and afraid to go
Right.
meet a bunch of people.
Yep.
So now I'm not just saying I go, hey, how are you doing? Give me a card, and I walk away. It's not what I'm saying. But my goal is to get a lot of, because the secret is in the follow up.
Correct.
That's the magic. Like
Mm-hmm.
you and I connected on LinkedIn, and then we had this initial call, the Zoom call, and that's how we got to know each other, and that led to us doing this podcast together, and whatever
Mm-hmm.
else that comes from it. So the secret's in the follow up. That's where you start to build rapport. And by the
Right.
way, not just one follow up, not just one Zoom or coffee, but multiple. Right?
Right.
You're probably not going to hear a lot about what I do professionally until the very end, or maybe not even a lot until maybe the second or third conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
the kids got to get, they got to learn, they got to, I believe the kids have to get, play in the sandbox and get to know each other
Yeah,
before we start talking about adult stuff, so you need to have
absolutely.
the connection.
And that's a really good point. And it brings in the AI, but it also brings in how people are connecting right now. I've noticed that we've got two different things going on with connection on things like Instagram and, Facebook and whatever. You got the people that will come in and connect and say, hi, I love what you're doing, or I was reading that you do this. I would love to connect with you and actually connect and take the time to get to know each other. And then you've got the people that you can tell it's AI reaching out, or they're just immediately in for the sell.
Yep,
And truthfully, that turns me off right away
absolutely.
because if you can't connect with me and you're literally just out to get what you're looking for,
Hmm.
I'm not interested. That's just how I work.
Yep.
Goes a little bit to my more feminine energy when it comes to selling, which I'm working on the more masculine energy and being the CEO. But, we all have our areas that we can improve in and we all have
Yeah.
our strengths. So,
Yeah, no
yeah.
doubt. I mean, I've said this on the show quite a few times, which is stop the pitch slapping. Okay, that's with a P,
Mhm.
not a B.
I
Okay,
love it.
I know you said a different B word earlier, but
Yeah.
try to keep things clean. But
Mm.
yeah, stop it. The pitch stopping. Ditch the pitch. It's not working.
Mhm.
I mean, will you get one or two? Maybe, but
Mhm.
like it's like to me, it's like okay. We haven't even gone on a date and you want to get
Yeah.
married? Like, come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
really? Like,
It's the know, like, and trust factor. And if
absolutely.
you get to know somebody and like them and then trust them, and sometimes
Yeah.
that all comes together in one call or
Hmm.
one connection.
That's right.
But if you're building a relationship, you're much more likely to be
Yeah,
interested in working with the person, but also sharing what they
that's right.
do to other people. So that's
That's right.
really important.
Agreed.
So a lot of people, we're talking about people walking in and saying, what can I get from this person? You teach being others focused. So how did shifting your mindset from transactional to relational change your life and your business also?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I got to give credit where credit's due. Bob Berg and John David Mann wrote a great book called The Go Giver. And there's also some sequels to that. I think it's The Go-Giver for Sales, and there's a few others. Great book. And just being others focused is so important. And I think there's a contradict, or there's a misperception, let's say, put it like that, on this. Well, I'm not going to give unless I get. Well, okay, that's interesting. So go to the fireplace and say, you give me fire, then I'll put the wood in. Okay, like, come on,
Yeah.
you gotta sow before you reap, right? And
Mhm.
so number one, I don't sow with the purpose to reap. I don't give because I'm going to get. But I have had the best financial years of my entire life, the last 4 or 5 years, because I've given and given and given. I've sowed seed. And in my book, The Tao of a Master Connector, again, the same shameless plug again.
Mhm.
Um, but in the book, I talk about this, and I didn't make this up. I learned this, but the secret of the corn is what I call it. And you put corn seed in the ground. You don't expect tomatoes. You don't expect, like, cherries, whatever. You're going to get corn.
Right.
And when you put corn seed in, kernels of corn, you put maybe three or four, and you water it, and there's seed time, progression time, and harvest time. But then eventually, what you get is a stalk of corn, and in that stalk are probably 8 or 9 ears of corn. And how many kernels of corn are there in those ears of corn? Probably close to 1,000. So that's the law of increasing returns, right? You sow and then you eventually reap, and then you get more. You get more than you sow, but you
Mhm.
get it in the same kind of which you sow. You're not going to sow, uh, you know, you know, corn seed and get apples, right? So you
Right.
sow time, you're going to get time back. So that's super important, and that's the mentality behind, the kind of the why behind giving. But it really has been a blessing to me. I feel better when I give.
Mhm.
It's kind of like this. I don't know if when you're a kid it's different, but when you become an adult, there's a lot of joy when you give somebody a gift and they appreciate it.
Mhm.
I think there's more joy to giving, in my opinion, than just getting a gift. And usually it's a gift like a sweater, and I don't ever wear sweaters, or some
Mhm.
kind of ugly tie I would never wear. So yeah, I like giving
Yeah.
better.
I
But
agree. And it's
yeah,
it's having that servant's heart
yes,
and caring about what you do and caring about who you are so that you can help others and it will come back to you because of that.
no doubt. And
And
you
but
asked about sales, but it's the same idea.
Mhm.
You want to get to a point where you're just giving and giving and giving, and that client of yours is saying to themselves, I can't imagine doing business with anyone else
Mhm.
because this person is just constantly there for me, and you outserve them, and they're like, wow. It's the same thing when you work for a company. I know that the younger generation, so pay me now, but it's no, you got to work and you got to prove that you're worthy of more
Mhm.
first. And it's the same thing in sales. You know, you just gotta show with the right heart that you really care and go the extra mile. You don't hear that a lot. That's like old
Yeah.
school mentality,
Yep.
but going the extra mile is so crucial.
It truly is. And if you think about like gift giving, if
Yeah.
somebody takes the time to actually think about what would be a great gift for you because
Hmm.
they know who you are or they know what you enjoy and they give you this gift that comes from their heart, even if it's like homemade. I actually find things like that really amazing. I love when people do things like that.
Yeah.
Um,
No doubt.
it just opens your heart so much more to the fact that they actually took the time to consider you and put the thought and effort into it. It's the same thing with serving your clients.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about how your mentor said, all right, go out and talk to three new people every day. So how do you recommend growing connections efficiently so that it's not taking up all your time, but you're really truly getting out there, connecting with the right people? What are your recommendations?
It's a great question. So one thing is live life intentionally on purpose. And this may be contradictory to some of you listening to this, but so when I go and join a gym and they give you the little card that shows when the busiest times are, and they're like, you don't want to come during these times. These are really busy.
Hmm.
That's the times I want to come
Okay.
because there's more people to
Yeah.
meet.
Yeah.
If I go into a supermarket, I'll go on the longest line because it's an
Hmm.
opportunity to be around people longer. I like to go to the deli counter because you're hanging around there. So when my wife shops, I'm doing the deli counter because you're mingling, and there's probably other guys that are waiting for their meet, and you can have a conversation and meet people that way.
Mm-hmm.
So live life on purpose. I don't go to the cheapest gas station necessarily. I go because, by the way, what are you going to save?
Mm,
So you can save what, $1?
yeah.
Like whatever. It's not gonna make or break you. But I go to the ones that are the busiest, that have the type of people I'm looking to meet on
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Yeah.
So live life on purpose. That's number one. I think LinkedIn is a great one.
Mm-hmm.
And my policy when you connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you dare to connect with me, I recommend you do. By the way, I'll have to. You may have to follow me first or if you have the messaging opportunity, message me. Tell me you met me on the show. But I'll have to clear out some, because when you hit 30,000, you can't get more connections.
Mm,
But whenever people do connect with me, or I connect with them and they accept it, I always say, let's jump on a call, because what good is being connected unless you know something about each other? So that's a policy that I recommend is when you connect with somebody, get on a call with them.
mm-hmm.
Well, first go connect with them, and you can do that. I think LinkedIn lets you do, I want to say 200 a week, where you could put out 200 connect requests. They used to be
Mm-hmm.
unlimited, but they stopped that. But you could do a whole bunch and be strategic about how you do it, and then get on a call, right? Because a connection's a connection. But when you get to have a call with somebody, now you've taken it to a level of actually meeting a stranger, in my opinion.
Right.
Having a new connection is not meeting a stranger.
Mm.
So those are a couple ways. Join a networking group.
Mm-hmm.
Connect people that way is a great way. I like the fact that I have a group every Friday. That's one of my groups. I go, Friday morning, and it's an opportunity for me to not only have connections with people, but also people bring guests and
Mm-hmm.
visitors and all that kind of stuff. So it's a great way to also meet people. But yeah, but the biggest thing is really live your life intentionally, on
Yeah.
purpose, and don't look to if I'm going to go to the supermarket, I might say, okay, when is a time where there's a lot of people in the supermarket versus going when there's nobody in the supermarket? So just be very purposeful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's funny, you never know where you're going to meet somebody,
Never
right?
know.
Of course, a networking group, everybody's looking for that connection. If you're on LinkedIn, pretty much everybody's looking for that. But when you go to someplace like a supermarket, I my kids always were like, "Who was that?" After I had a conversation with somebody, and I'm like, "I don't know." And I love to have conversations with people and connect with people. First of all, I think you said this earlier, just smile at people, say hi.
Yeah,
You never know whose day you're going to
that's
make
right.
by making eye contact and saying hello to somebody. Also, you never know who you're going to connect with.
You never
And so
know.
you start talking to somebody, and the next thing you know, you have something in common, and maybe you want to get together and do something. Maybe they have a business that you're interested in,
Yep.
pursuing being a client or vice versa. So you never, never know. And my kids got used to, they used to say, "Oh my God, why do you have to talk to everybody?" Then they got to the point they were like, "Oh, you must not," they were surprised if it was somebody I knew that I was talking to. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What's something that you think that people do that immediately blocks authentic connection?
Well, I want to answer that, but I also I'll answer it by adding to the other part of the other question that you were
Okay.
talking about. So I have a kind of four-step formula for meeting people, because I think talking to people are great, but if your kids are saying who was that and you're like, I don't know,
Yeah.
that's great, but you want to
Hmm.
you want to get to know who they are, and actually, in my opinion, exchange contact information,
Yeah.
exchange numbers. It happened to me today at the gym. I talked to a guy at the sauna, fully clothed. Okay, both of us. Okay, but
No judgment anyway. So.
yeah, exactly. So, so here's it. You break the ice, right? Say something. You could smile, but something. Right? Nice hair, like who does your hair or whatever, right? I,
Yeah.
I won't like that. Might be weird for me asking that, but who does your hair? But I could say, hey, my wife is looking for a nice stylist, something, right?
Yeah.
But just break the ice, whatever it is. And by the way, that can go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers deep. Oh,
Mm,
really? Who is it? How do you like it? What do they charge? Why'd you pick that place? Blah, 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 whatever. You can go 5, 6, 8 layers deep.
mhm.
Next thing I like to ask is where you're from. You from around here or whatever? And that could go like, did you live here your whole life? What brought you here? And where were you before? But you can go 3, 4, 5, 8 layers deep on that one. And then I like to say, what do you do? And I know that some people don't like that question, but I didn't say, what do you do for work? I just said, what do you do? You could tell me if you like to ski and you like to go fishing, whatever. That doesn't
Yep.
mean. But what do you do? And that could lead to a whole lot of questions or a lot of. And notice I'm asking questions, but I'm not interrogating because I'm
Hmm.
genuinely interested in that person. And of course, they may ask me questions and I'm not going to divert. I'm going to answer them. I might be relatable a little bit, but I'm genuinely interested in them, and the answer might lead to another question, and so forth. And by the time we've gotten through those layers, in my opinion, we're friends. We just made
Mm.
a friend. It's
Yeah.
3, 4, 5 minutes. I know, like the guy I met today. He's 22. He's in the National Guard. A he's also in college. He is
Mm.
also look. He said he's studying criminal justice, but he doesn't know if he wants to do that. I said, why? He said, because I really want to make a lot of money. I'm like, okay.
Mm.
And he says, I know that's probably not going to help me do that. And so, and I'm sure there's more. I just have to think about what else we talked about. But the point is, you're gonna have this kind of mini friendship, and just like that, I said, yeah, we should stay in touch. He's like, yeah, absolutely. And I whipped out my phone, and I said, hey, let me punch in your number. What's yours?
Yeah. I love that.
Let me give you my number. What's yours? And then I put in my number, and then I text him, and you know and that's just step one because I'm going to want to get on a call with them or maybe meet them for coffee, not for any weird reason, but I'm
Hmm.
just because you don't know where things are going to go.
Right.
So that's the formula. Now, the authenticity piece of it is really genuinely number one, really caring about them. Number two, because he asked me at one point, "What do you do?"
Mm.
And so and you have to come up with whatever your story is,
Right.
whatever but I like to, and I've done some talks on let's get rid of the what do you do dance, right? So I tell a story instead.
Hmm.
So when he said, what do you do? I said, well, actually, I have quite a few things. I started my first company out of college in advertising, did that for a lot of years, transitioned into technology, consulting, at a karate studio. I do speaking broadcasts, and I wrote a book. Just a few things. That's what I say, just
Hmm.
like that. And he usually say, yeah, that's a few things, huh?
Yeah.
Um, and so, but that's it. But to me, it's enough to kind of say, well, this person's interesting.
Hmm.
But then I go right back to them. So how long you been doing this or whatever? And I don't keep it. I don't wait for them to say, okay, I just stop talking and wait for them to say, oh, cool, tell me more about this. Now, I go back to them because to me, it's about them.
Hmm.
So that's partly one is being curious and interested in them. I think that is other focus, but it's also there's an authenticity about it. And then the
Mm.
second thing is being vulnerable, be sharing some of your challenges, right? When appropriate, I'll tell people that I was an introvert. I'll tell people that I was bullied as a kid. I was in a dark place. I feel like those things make people relatable
Hmm.
to you.
Yeah.
That you don't think you're this big burly person. So one thing I'll mention. I think you mentioned the comparison game, and with my
Hmm.
mentor, I played the comparison game for many years. I always fell short. I thought he was great. He was bold, charismatic. I never thought I could be him. And then I realized, you know what? There's some things that I have that maybe I wouldn't say he doesn't have, but I could
Hmm.
accentuate some of the things, which is my sincerity, my authenticity. I could just share some of the things that I've gone through, and I believe it allowed, in my way, in a way, has become my biggest strength. And one of my talks is in our weakness there's strength.
Mm.
So I believe that by being vulnerable and sharing those things that you've gone through, I think really breaks barriers down too. And that is how I believe you could really be authentic and being transparent, being able to share some of those things. I think it's super important in today's world where it's all
Absolutely.
about the perfect day, right? Your Instagram
Mm.
post is showing your lips are pouted and it's like everything's done up perfectly, and everyone thinks
Yeah.
that's what your life is. But no, share some of those vulnerable moments.
Yeah. And I think that makes everybody so much more relatable. Like I said before, you never
Yeah,
know what's going on in somebody's life
never know.
until you take the time to get to know them. And that doesn't mean you need to be their best friend, but you can be a cheerleader for them. You can be a
Absolutely.
connection for them that maybe they feel comfortable talking to you.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
So if somebody's listening and they feel awkward, disconnected, unseen, all the things that I know I felt, you have felt in life, what's something that you would suggest is like the first thing that they could do to start to build some confidence in terms of making connections?
I'd say for me, one of the things that helped me is reading. Thank God,
Mhm.
the created Audible because I'm dyslexic, so reading was really hard for me. So just
Mhm.
having some knowledge and just being able to be, able to hold a conversation down. And I don't ever want to be an expert, and I really rather hear, even if somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing pickleball. I've done pickleball. I like the sport." I'm not an expert, but I'd be like, "What do you like about it? Tell me more." Whatever. So, but being able to have the confidence of knowing you read some books, I'm now at a place where I probably read. I'll read like maybe a book a month, sometimes two books a month, right? And in my case, listen to the books,
Mm.
right? So I think that helps.
Yeah.
I think understanding and knowing that you don't have to be a great conversationalist. If you watch my TED talk, and I think it'll help you, because it's not about you or me; it's about them. And
Mhm.
if you learn how to ask questions and really be curious, you're going to be a great conversationalist. In fact, I
Mhm.
remember hearing, I think it might have been from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which, by the way, is a great book. I would recommend it. But I remember the story or something, and I'm paraphrasing dramatically, not dramatically, but I'm paraphrasing a lot here. But guy goes to this cocktail party and he has this conversation with this high society woman, mature woman, and they're having a conversation, and basically later on she goes to a mutual contact and said he's the most incredible conversationalist I've ever come across. And what he did was he said three words because he really listened. He
Mm.
asked a few questions and he listened or whatever. And so he wasn't a great conversationalist if you think about it, although he was, because he
Mhm.
just listened and asked some questions and he wasn't, you know, you don't want to be on, distracted by looking at your phone. You want to give eye
Mhm.
contact, nod, maybe say a couple of things, reflect back on what they're saying, so it doesn't you don't come across like you're on mute. But
Right.
but really listen, and I think people will appreciate it. Learn people's names.
Mhm.
The most important topic in the entire for that person is themselves. The most important thing for them is that most important word in there that they want to hear is their name. So
Mhm.
if you could just learn those two things, you'll be great. Don't
Yeah.
don't think you have to be amazing. Just be curious, and
Yeah.
you're gonna fail a little bit, but you learn. You're winning or you're learning, right? So you're gonna fail. You start a conversation. I'll say this. This may help you too. People are like dogs, okay? And I know you have some dogs,
It's a
so
good thing
maybe
because I love dogs.
yeah. But here's what I mean, and you have a pity, but
Mm.
my mentor's pit bull, who's no longer with us, but she was sweet. She was a
Mm.
great dog, really,
Oh, they
really
get a
beautiful.
bad rep, and
They
it's
get a
really
bad
the
rap,
people. It's really the
but
people.
when you go to pet a dog, maybe they're well, we won't use the pit bull, but maybe they're a Doberman Pinscher or a German Shepherd, which can be sweet too, by the way. But
Mhm.
or you could go pet a dog. Maybe they're a golden retriever, lick your hand and tails wagging, or maybe they're like a cat, they just don't care and walk away.
Mhm.
It's not you, it's the dog or the cat, right? It's like it's not you, and so don't really worry about it. I
Mhm.
remember one time I had this goal. I was going to meet the three people, and this is earlier on, and I'm in a Barnes and Noble, and there's a guy looks like a pretty crispy looking guy, and I'm going to. I'm trying to go talk to him, and I finally see him, and I say something, and I get like a blank stare.
Mm.
Okay, and there wasn't a lot of people in there, so I was like, okay, I'm going to try that again. So walk around, whatever. I come up to him again, and I said something. He says, "No speak the English."
Mm.
So here I am thinking it was me, but it wasn't. He just didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't understand the language.
Yeah.
So it's not you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You go pet a dog. You know, you're going to get one of three reactions, and just realize
It's
that's
their
how it is.
temperament.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
you.
And we definitely put our own thoughts and feelings about how we are on other people in terms of interacting
Oh
with them,
yeah.
because sometimes you'll look at somebody and be like, oh, they don't look like they look like a colder person, but give them the opportunity because you never know. And a lot of times if they're rude, it has to do with what their mental state is at the time, where they are. It has nothing to do with you.
I
And
remember,
so,
yeah, no doubt. I remember there was a guy, Anthony. I met him originally in at a gas station,
mhm,
and he's a big guy, athletic looking. He had like a hoodie on, and he had this scowl, like this maniacal scowl. And I just said something. He takes his hoodie down, big smile, and he's like, "Steve, man, after we started talking, he's like, he ran to his car, he gave me a flyer, he gave me his card. He's like, we need to, like, oh,
mm,
because it just broke the ice. So
yeah,
he looked like he was going to kill me,
hmm,
but he was the nicest guy in the world.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep, that happens a lot. And I love what you said about books, because reading is really important for our brain. It's great knowledge. We
yeah,
always should be learning new things.
no doubt,
Always should be learning new things. And meeting new people and having those new experiences are so good for us too.
100%.
So I love what you said. I would love for you to share a little bit about how people can connect with you.
Yeah. So the best way is to, if you're looking for a speaker, my speaker website is master-connector.com. My show website is masterconnector.show. General website, stevespiro.com. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You're going to put Steve Spiro in. I think it's going to show up as the number one search for Steve Spiro Master Connector. But yeah, I love for you to connect with me. Go check out my TED Talk. It's the
It's great.
how introverts can out connect the rest. So, but yeah, I'd love to connect with you.
Excellent. So that information will all be in the show notes. So go ahead and check that out. And my final question for you is, what does living a life beyond BS look like for you?
Come check me out every day.
Mm,
Again, we're talking authenticity, right? So
mhm,
you live your life and you just live it honestly with integrity. You are who you are, right? I mean, that was the big changing point for me when I started to talk about my mentor and I played the comparison game. But I realized, listen, I'm going to be the best version of me, so just be who I am. Don't try to be somebody else.
right.
That was the biggest thing for me. And when I finally learned to be the best version of myself, and I think I talk about it in my TED talk, I say, I've learned this, that you'll be a second class somebody else, but you'll be a first class you. Be a first class you. Just be
Yeah.
you, because you
Yeah.
are amazing. And if you're listening to this, you're watching this, believe me, you are amazing. You just
Mm,
maybe you need to figure out, how you are amazing, but it's there within you. I believe everyone has a seed of greatness within you. You just need to tap into it and allow it to come up. And sometimes, I'll say this, as if you look at a plant that has a flower, but that plant, there's no flower, the flower is not coming up. Is it the plant's fault?
mm,
Or is it maybe the environment or the soil or the lighting that was around it? So
mhm,
it doesn't mean the plant's terrible. It just means maybe it needs to be in a different place. So
right.
so I believe you're amazing. And to be the best version of you, and maybe you need to change your environment, because that's when you'll really flourish and flower.
Yeah. I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time and being here with us and sharing all your
Absolutely.
wisdom.
So honor. Thank you again for having me.
Thanks. So, thank you everyone so much for sharing the space with me and with Steve today. My hope is that you walk away knowing that you have the power to choose differently. Go live fully, freely, and unapologetically. Your life beyond BS starts now. I'm so grateful you were here today. Remember, your peace, joy, and happiness aren't found in the BS. They're found in your choices. If this episode spoke to you, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe, and share it with a friend. For ways to connect or work with me, check the show notes or visit heathermcnally.com. Until next time, keep choosing you and keep living your life beyond BS.